The Story of the Titanic. A graded reader, Level B1. Chapter 1, The Giants of Belfast. In 1909, the city of Belfast was busy with the sound of hammers and machines. The White Star Line wanted to build the biggest and most luxurious ships in the world. They started building the Titanic at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. Over 15,000 men worked on the ship during its construction. It was made of massive steel plates and millions of iron rivets. The engineers were proud because they included special safety features. They designed watertight compartments that could close if water entered the ship. Because of this, many people called the Titanic unsinkable. Chapter 2, A Floating Palace. The Titanic was much more than just a big boat. For the first-class passengers, it was like a five-star hotel on the water. There were beautiful restaurants, a swimming pool, and a gymnasium. The famous grand staircase was decorated with expensive wood and a glass ceiling. However, the ship was also home to many poor immigrants in third class. They were traveling to America to find a better life and new opportunities. Even though their rooms were simple, they were better than on most other ships. Everyone felt lucky to be on such a modern and magnificent vessel. Chapter 3, All Aboard. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic was finally ready to leave Southampton, England. Crowds of people gathered at the docks to say goodbye to their friends and family. The ship looked like a mountain of steel against the blue sky. As the whistle blew, the massive engine started to push the ship into the water. It was a moment of great excitement and pride for the crew. Captain Edward Smith was in charge of the journey. He was a very experienced officer who was planning to retire after this trip. The Titanic moved slowly out of the harbor, heading toward the open sea. Chapter 4, Life on the Atlantic. The first few days of the voyage were perfect and the weather was calm. In first class, wealthy businessmen and famous actors enjoyed delicious meals. They talked about politics and the future while listening to the ship's band. Down in third class, the atmosphere was also happy and full of energy. People played music, danced, and shared stories about their dreams for America. The Titanic was moving quickly across the Atlantic Ocean. The passengers felt safe and comfortable in their floating world. They did not know that the conditions in the North Atlantic were changing. Chapter 5, Warnings in the Dark. By April 14, the temperature outside began to drop significantly. The air was freezing, and the sea was unusually quiet and flat. Other ships in the area started sending wireless messages about icebergs. The telegraph operators on the Titanic were very busy sending personal messages for passengers. Some of the ice warnings were delivered to the bridge, but others were missed. The crew believed that the Titanic was strong enough to handle any small problems. The lookout men, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, were high up in the crow's nest. They watched the dark horizon carefully, but they did not have binoculars. At 11:40 p.m., the silence was broken by a sudden shout. Chapter 6, The Fatal Impact. Suddenly, Frederick Fleet saw a dark shape in the water directly in front of the ship. He rang the warning bell 3 times and telephoned the bridge immediately. "Iceberg, right ahead," he shouted with urgency. The officers on the bridge acted quickly to turn the ship and stop the engines. For a moment, it seemed like the Titanic might miss the danger. However, the giant iceberg scraped along the side of the hull under the water. The impact was surprisingly quiet, and many passengers did not feel a thing. Deep inside the ship, the situation was much more serious than it appeared. The ice had created a long series of holes in the steel plates. Water began to pour into the first 5 watertight compartments. The designer of the ship, Thomas Andrews, quickly realized the terrible truth. The Titanic was designed to stay afloat with 4 compartments flooded, but not 5. He told Captain Smith that the unsinkable ship had only a few hours left. Chapter 7, Women and Children First. The captain ordered the crew to prepare the lifeboats and wake up the passengers. Because people believed the ship was safe, there were only enough lifeboats for half the people on board. The crew began to follow the traditional rule of women and children first. Many wives did not want to leave their husbands, and many families were separated. In the beginning, some passengers refused to get into the lifeboats. They thought the giant ship was much safer than a small boat in the middle of the dark ocean. The ship's band stayed on the deck and played cheerful music to keep everyone calm. They continued to play even as the deck began to tilt at a dangerous angle. As the night went on, the atmosphere changed from confusion to deep fear. Distress signals were sent out into the sky, but the nearest ship was too far away to help in time. Chapter 8: The Final Moments. By 2 a.m., the front of the ship was completely underwater. The remaining lifeboats had left, and hundreds of people were still trapped on the deck. The lights of the Titanic flickered and then went out forever. A loud, terrifying noise echoed across the water as the ship's hull broke into two pieces. The stern of the ship rose high into the air against the starry sky. Slowly, the heavy steel structure disappeared beneath the freezing waves of the Atlantic. The temperature of the water was below freezing, and it was impossible to survive for long. A haunting silence fell over the ocean as the survivors in the lifeboats waited for help. They watched the spot where the great ship had been, unable to believe what they had seen. Chapter 9: Rescue in the Cold Dawn. A ship called the Carpathia had heard the Titanic's distress calls and was racing to help. The captain of the Carpathia took great risks by sailing fast through the dangerous ice. At 4 a.m., the survivors in the lifeboats finally saw the lights of the rescue ship. One by one, the cold and exhausted survivors were pulled onto the Carpathia. There was no celebration, only tears, and the shock of a terrible loss. The ship searched for more people, but it found mostly empty chairs and debris. Out of the 2,200 people who had started the journey, only about 700 survived. The Carpathia turned around and began the slow journey to New York. The news of the tragedy spread across the world by telegraph, shocking every nation. Chapter 10: A Lasting Legacy. The sinking of the Titanic led to major changes in maritime safety laws. After the disaster, it became mandatory for every ship to have enough lifeboats for everyone. Ships were also required to keep their wireless radios turned on 24 hours a day. For many decades, the Titanic lay hidden and forgotten in the deep, dark water. In 1985, a team of explorers finally discovered the wreck 3,800 meters under the sea. They found the ship in two pieces, surrounded by thousands of personal objects. Shoes, plates, and suitcases told the silent stories of the people who had lived and died there. The Titanic remains a powerful symbol of human pride and the unpredictable power of nature. It is a reminder that even the greatest technology can be defeated by the elements.